On the show today, we've got Dylan Tyrer, and we are talking all about the young stars of the Blue Jackets and what the season really ended up being when all is said and done. That's coming up today on Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. Now, like I said at the top of the show, Dylan Tyer's here today. Wonderful CBJ broadcaster, host of the Pipeline podcast, and we are going to talk all about the Blue Jackets season, how it went. We're going to talk about Adam Fantilli. We're going to talk about Marchenko. We're going to talk about Ken Johnson, all of those players that we know and love. And we might even get a little bit of chatter about prospects as well. So I'm just going to play right into my conversation with Dylan. The offseason keeps on keeping on, and I've got Dylan Tyrer here today, and we are going to talk about just a whole bunch of stuff, because while news is kind of slow at the minute, there's still a lot of things to talk about. So Dylan, thanks for hopping on the show. I appreciate you giving up some of your valuable off-season time. But I wanted to talk first of all just kind of about last season as a whole, because I think if you told me like the day before training camp opened that the Blue Jackets would finish 2 points out of a playoff spot, I would have been like, no way. Like, how much of a surprise, a welcome surprise, was this season?
Well, first off, Jay, thanks for having me. Thinking about that is an interesting question because, going into the season, prior to, of course, the tragedy that happened with Johnny Gaudreau, I would have said that the Blue Jackets would have surprised some people this past season. Like, I thought the Blue Jackets, honestly, would have been where they kind of finished up this season in the hunt. Then, of course, that happens and things change a little bit. To say that I thought at that point the Blue Jackets would be competing for a wild card spot, I don't think I would have said that then, but I didn't think the Blue Jackets were going to be as bad as people thought they were going to be this season. Remember, people were talking about them being potentially the worst team in the NHL, if not the worst, then maybe one of the 3 to 5 worst teams in the NHL. I thought they had a better roster than that. I definitely thought they had more than that. And I think they showcased exactly that, right? That some key players took steps for the Blue Jackets this season, and that's why they ended up being in the hunt. Was it an against all odds type season? Yes, it was. Do I wish the Blue Jackets had made the playoffs? Yes, I do. But when you look back, kind of taking a bird's eye view at everything, it was a very successful season for the Blue Jackets. And a lot of that is because key young players took big steps.
Yeah, for sure. I still think I saw one guy on Twitter that was like, this team is going to be worse than the expansion era Capitals. And I was like, man, I appreciate a hot take, but that feels, even for me, that's a little too hot, right?
Yeah, I did. No, the Blue Jackets were never going to be terrible, but certainly they exceeded expectations.
Sure. And that's obviously because of, as the young players that you just mentioned, some of those guys I want to talk about. Let's start with Adam Fantilli, who obviously missed the end of his rookie season with that injury. Took a minute to kind of get going in his sophomore season. There was, sophomore slump. It's understandable. He'll pick it up. He'll get better. And then obviously Monahan goes down with that injury, and Adam Fantilli just is shot out of a cannon. If you'll excuse the pun, like, how important was Fantilli's kind of the second half of this season? How important was Fantilli to this team in that kind of late season push to make the playoffs?
Oh, I mean, I think Adam Fantilli was wildly important for the Blue Jackets this season. Not only just when Sean Monahan went out of the lineup, he stepped up to be that number one center, but remember, after a while, the Blue Jackets did fade. They were struggling without Sean Monahan, but when Sean did come back into the lineup, I think Adam offered that second line center to give the Blue Jackets a 1-2 punch that they haven't had in a long time down the middle, maybe ever. So I think the steps that Fantilli took this season were extremely important for the Blue Jackets. You think about all the goals that he scored this year. Where are they without that, right? That's a ton of production, scoring 30-plus goals as a second-year player in the NHL. I think Adam Fantilli, the second youngest Blue Jacket to ever score 30 goals in a season behind Rick Nash, and that was the season that Rick won the Rocket Richard Trophy for tying for the most goals in the NHL that year. So that's pretty good company, right, for Adam Fantilli to have scored 30 goals as a 19, 20-year-old in the NHL this past season. He was huge for the Blue Jackets. I think he took a lot of strides in his game defensively as well. And really, I think that's a big reason we saw him take steps offensively too, in that he learned to slow some things down, specifically in the defensive zone. He talked about that a lot this past season, in that he didn't need to be going a million miles an hour all the time. And I think you would see that watching Adam Fantilli a lot during his rookie year. Of course, he got hurt, but then to start the second season, and I think, you can kind of call the beginning, the first half of year 2 for Adam Fantilli, the conclusion of his rookie year, to get him to that, 82 game mark. And really, once he got there, 82 career games around that point is when he took off, which is great to see. But when you watched him early in his career, it seemed like he was a bit of a tryhard out there. He was always trying to be the fastest, the hardest, the guy making the most skilled plays, the best plays. And I think when he realized that you could let the game come to you a little bit, it did wonders for his game. And he said that Sean Monahan played a big part in teaching him that he was just able to watch Sean over the course of this past season and take some things. And of course, Boone Jenner's in there as well. He credited both those guys for helping him take a step this season. So I don't even think we've seen Adam Fantilli, frankly, scratch the surface. Scoring 30 goals was great, but he looks like a guy that could score 40 plus and be contributing, 80, 90 plus points in a season every year.
Yeah, exactly. It's especially when you consider, I think the first half of the season he had 7 goals, and then the second half of the season he had 24 goals.
Yeah, just exploded. Think, 2 hat tricks this past season. I'm going to
go score goals now. It was great. But in a minute, I've got more of my conversation with Dylan as we talk about more of the Blue Jackets' young stars. But first, I've got to tell you about wonderful pistachios. You're looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with wonderful pistachios. They're one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller for longer. I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack. I am a gremlin, so I like to eat pistachios 14 at a time. And I can basically just kind of pour the open bag in my mouth like the monster that I am. But if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snackin and get crackin with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. I want to talk about another Michigan alumni because Blue Jackets have a million of them. Kent Johnson needed to be better this season than he was last season. I think that's fair to say. I think that a lot of his struggles last season, not all of them were on him. I think some of it was, there was a lot of upheaval in the organization last season, but I think it's fair to say that Kent Johnson needs to be better this season than last season.
Yeah.
Boy, was he, right? What do you think is the biggest thing that happened to Kent Johnson between the end of last season and the start of this season? Because obviously he showed up this season and was like, 11 points in his first 10 NHL games, his first 10 games of the season or something insane?
I can't remember what he did, in terms of putting up points, but it was a lot. He was the Blue Jackets' best player for a lot of the start of the season. He did get hurt, but he came back and he picked it up pretty nicely when he came back as well. Well, the number one thing for Ken Johnson is he put on some weight and size. That was very noticeable when he got to training camp last year, which is crazy to think about being almost a full year ago at this point. With that said, I'm excited to see what he looks like after another offseason in the weight room. But guys talked about it. They'd come back and do their team skates as a group before training camp. And when we got the opportunity to speak with the players, they said at that point, they knew Kent Johnson was going to be good this season. He was the best player on the ice. So I think adding that size was key. But what do you do with that size? Well, he got a little bit quicker, I think, which was very key in allowing himself to create more space on the ice. And in adding a little bit of size and maybe adding a little bit of quickness, he was able to win more battles this season. We saw him protect the puck more effectively. And I think in doing that and winning more battles, his creativity comes out, right? When he has the puck on his stick more, he's able to create. When he creates that separation, he's able to create offensively. What I was surprised by this year was, the goal scoring ability for Kent Johnson. We've seen it on the power play a little bit, but he put the puck in the net this season, which is a great sign, because I think when we think of Kent Johnson, it's more so as a playmaker, right? A guy that's going to put up 40, 50, 60 assists in an NHL season. Well, now it looks like he's a guy that's going to be scoring 25 to maybe even 35 goals a season. Of course, this past year was 1 year. We don't know what it's going to look like going forward, but, optimistically, it looks like he's going to be a heck of a player. One thing I will say with KJ is I thought he faded a little bit down the stretch as the season went on. Of course, that's to be expected. This was, really, he did miss time, but his first full NHL season, I think, really being a key piece of the Blue Jackets. I know his rookie year, he put up pretty solid numbers for a rookie, but would I call him a key piece that season? Not necessarily. This year, he was a primary playmaker, a primary scorer for the Blue Jackets, and he did fade a little bit down the stretch. So I just think another season in the weight room, continuing to condition and really just getting used to being in the NHL will do him very, very well. So like I said, I'm excited to see him come back for training camp this year to see what he looks like. And I expect him to be a key contributor to the Blue Jackets yet again this year and hopefully improve on the numbers from last year.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's something that a lot of people, like myself included, forget how young some of these guys are, right?
Yeah.
Like Ken Johnson's 22?
Yeah,
Turns
he's a
23 this
very
summer,
young
maybe?
guy.
Like, it's a child, basically, like,
Right.
So I think, and I forget that as well. It's like Adam Fantilli as well, 20 years old. You forget that because you watch him on the ice and you're like, oh, yeah, no, he looks like he's been playing the game for decades, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, Ken Johnson, the other interesting thing about Ken Johnson was he didn't spend a lot of time on the penalty kill, but he got I think he played about half an hour total on the penalty kill.
He early in the season, Dean Evison utilized him on the penalty kill, which I thought was intriguing at that point. It faded as the year went on. I would like to see the Blue Jackets maybe try it again. But again, KJ's got to add a little bit more size and things like that to be more effective on the PK too.
Yeah. I want to talk about one more guy that really kind of exploded this season, and that's Kirill Marchenko, who right from his rookie season, there was something there, right? Like he went in and he scored, what was it, 20? Did he have 22 goals and 4 assists or something?
Yeah, what did he have the rookie year? 21 goals, 23 goals, something like I should know that off the top of my head.
Something hilarious. And then obviously he picked up the playmaker aspect last season, added a bunch of assists to that. And then this season became one of the better two-way forwards in the league. Like I'm biased, but he really added that aspect to his game. And what is it about? Is it just that he has put it all together? Do you think that he still has even more to add? Obviously, he was about a point a game, 30 goals this season. Is there 40, 50 goals in Kirill Marchenko's future, do you think?
No, I don't know about 40 or 50. I could see him, getting to 40 once or twice in his career. I think he's a perennial 30-goal scorer. He's been, even last year, he got a little bit streaky at times. If he could get a little bit more consistent with the goal scoring, he's a perennial 30-goal guy, 35-goal guy easily. I just think the biggest thing for Marchenko was, first of all, playing with a center like Sean Monahan really helped him. Sean's he does so many things well, right? I talked about, allowing the game to come to him. He's smart. He's been in the NHL a long time. He understands how things work, and they kind of spoke the same language, right? There was instant chemistry there with Kirill Marchenko and Sean Monahan that, They knew where the other one was going to be on the ice and vice versa. Sean's a good two-way centerman as well. I think he demanded, the style that Sean plays, I think demands that of his line mates as well, which is a big reason Marchenko was more successful defensively this season. And another big part of it is Marchenko, like I talked about with Ken Johnson, wins a lot of battles. He's very hard to get off the puck, and he takes it off guys a lot. I think about him kind of on the half wall or down low in the offensive zone, and it's hard to get the puck off of Kirill Marchenko. And if you do get it off of him, he's going to get it right back from you. So that's a big reason he was more successful this year. When you're winning those battles, you're staying in the offensive zone more, you're creating more. And when you're with a guy that's a playmaker and a scorer like Sean Monahan was this season, that's going to lead to more goals, whether it's Marchenko assisting on him or Marchenko scoring those goals. So that is a huge, huge factor. I'd say just both of those things led to him really breaking out this year, and that, he was more tenacious this season, dedicated defensively, and a big part of that was playing with Sean Monahan, playing with just a better center. I do think Marchenko, he's not that big of a guy. Like he's tall, he's 6'3", but he's a skinny guy. So, if he were to add maybe a little bit more muscle or meat, I think he could be even harder to play against. But it's just going to be a matter of really becoming consistent on a night-to-night basis. I thought we saw him take a huge step towards doing that this year. You notice Marchenko way more. He was on the score sheet almost every night, it felt like. But when it comes to maybe putting the puck in the net, a little bit more consistency, and he's going to be a real threat in the NHL and a huge piece for the Blue Jackets. He's already a big piece, but he could become a huge, huge piece and maybe one of the more underrated players in the NHL.
Yeah, especially when you look at that contract that he's on. Ken
Yeah,
Johnson
it's
as well,
a bargain.
the contract that Don Waddell signed last summer, and you're like, man, I was suspicious of them at first, but they have come in huge. Those contracts.
Yeah, those are two great contracts. They look great right now for sure.
Yeah, gonna get expensive in a couple of years, but until then, that's a problem for future Blue Jackets. The other thing as well with Marchenko and with Fantilli, actually, the power play.
Mm-hmm.
They scored, I think, 2 goals each on the power play of their 31 goals. So 29 even strength goals between them. Like, imagine this team with like a power play that is league average, let's say. And it was for a minute there, it was really hot. Monahan goes down, it never really comes back. And it does feel a little bit like the power play was the difference maker for this team. Obviously, the goaltending had its struggles. The defense improved, but still got places to go. But looking at the way that this team scored at even strength and the way that they scored with a bad advantage, like, it's like, does that seem like that has to be weighing on them, I think, for something that they really want to improve coming into next year?
Yeah, I think so. And that's been something that's really plagued the Blue Jackets always is
Forever,
just a lack of success on the power play. I think Sean Monahan was the straw that stirred the drink on the power play this year. What did he score? 8 power play goals. He and Voronkov, I think, were tied for the team lead with 8 power play goals. And it's when he was on the ice, the power play was good. When he wasn't on the ice, the power play was bad. It was pretty much as simple as that. Something about that bumper spot, right? That bumper spot that Sean Monahan plays is underrated for whatever reason. It feels like not a whole lot of guys want to play there, but he does, and he scored a lot of goals from there. The Blue Jackets were able to, either find him in the middle of the ice and he was able to score, or he's cleaning up those rebounds that come off the goaltender. Yeah, you do think about that if the Blue Jackets score a few more power play goals, how many more games do they win this season? If they score a few more power play goals, how many more points does a guy like Zach Werenski have or Ken Johnson have, right? Voronkov was great net front on the power play. I just think those special teams units, I think it takes some time. Like, you need to be together for a while. I think that's a really underrated part of it. You think about all the success that the Tampa Bay Lightning had a few years ago, or even now the Florida Panthers have been successful for, 3-4 consecutive seasons. How many of those guys in their core have been there the entire time? pretty much everybody, right? I know the Panthers, they kind of swap some guys out every season. And this year, guys like Marchand and Seth Jones have fit in very nicely. But those core guys are still there. It's still, Alexander Barkov is the guy that's pulling most of the weight for Florida. Sam Reinhart's been there for a few seasons now. Think back to Tampa. It was always those core guys: Kucherov, Stamkos, Point, Alex Killorn, Victor Hedman, Anthony Cirelli. All those guys were there that whole time. All of this is to say, I think you need to be together a while to really build that chemistry. And I think those teams that have been together for a while are the most successful, and special teams reflect that. For whatever reason, it's just, it's almost like that glue that connects the guys, right? You know where everybody's going to be on the ice. There's not change. And it's just the special teams, I think they take time like that, right? They can get hot, but for it really to be consistent over time, I just think there needs to be some continuity in the units. We started to see that this year. Unfortunately, Monahan goes down. So if the Blue Jackets can stay healthy and start to create a little bit more continuity in their systems, of course, they've got the same coach this year. That's been something that's changed the last couple of years, is they've changed the way that, they've run things, that they've run their systems, because they've had different coaches, from Brad Larson to Mike Babcock, who of course didn't coach a game, to Pascal Vincent, to now Dean Evison. Things change over time. You need some continuity, and the Blue Jackets are hoping they can create some more continuity. And of course, it's kind of a chicken and egg thing, right? You need success to create that continuity. You need some continuity to create success. But, I think they have the pieces. Again, these younger guys are learning the NHL, getting more comfortable. And, players like Adam Fantilli, Kent Johnson, Denton Mateychuk potentially will be big pieces of the power play going forward. And, the better those guys get, I think the better the power play will be.
Yeah. And I think as well, it's important to note that obviously they practice the power play, they practice special teams.
They do.
But on average, 10, maybe 20% of the game is going to be on the power play.
Yeah.
You simply don't get as much ice time on the power play as you do at even strength. So I think it's definitely something that, like you say, consistency is key.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you can definitely harp on some of the shortcomings of the Blue Jackets special teams units. They need to improve. I mean, you have to improve, but some of that is simply, if I've known you for 5 years, our relationship and our chemistry is going to be better than if I've known you for 1 week. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like it's just how it goes. The longer they can spend together, the better it should be.
And that's all I've got for today. Tomorrow, I know it's Saturday, but we've got a bonus episode for you because there was no Thursday episode. We've got more chat with Dylan. We're going to talk more prospects. We're going to talk about the upcoming draft. We're going to talk about what the Blue Jackets need to do this offseason, and any kind of potential players that Dylan thinks that the Blue Jackets might take a look at acquiring, or potentially should take a look at acquiring. So that's all coming up tomorrow. Thank you for listening to this episode, for making it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I have been Jay Foster. You can find me on Blue Sky at JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO-Blue Jacket on Blue Sky. And email me if you have comments, questions, criticisms. I'm at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Thank you once again for listening. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.